Are we live?
Yes.
People can hear us. Well, then I should start. Hi, everyone. I'm Eugene Sepulveda. I'm the co-founder of Culturati. And Culturati is a community of CEOs, executives, managers, investors who get the power of culture. We come together in many forums to share our playbooks. And you're at one of them today, which is Culturati Live. We host these webinars monthly. We also host an annual summit, which is coming up April 6th, 7th, and 8th. You should check it out. It's going to be one of our best ever. It, of course, is virtual. And then we also have conversations, quarterly conversations around the country, dinners, seminars. We have a bi-weekly newsletter, and we have a monthly magazine. It is my honor today to introduce a dear friend, a Culturati scholar, and Rajkumari Neogy. She's the creator of I Restart Framework, the Biology of Belonging Bootcamp, and is the author of the WIT Factor, Shifting the Workplace Paradigm by Becoming Your Optimal Self. Rajkumari is fascinated by team culture, especially in the tech arena, and believes that every individual brings a superpower that is often unlocked. She provides expertise in team culture cohesion, disruptive diversity and inclusion, and organizational epigenetics. Over the last 20 years, Rajkumari has worked with a lot of organizations, including Slack, HelloSigns, Salesforce, Walt Disney, Wells Fargo, Cisco Systems, Facebook, and Amazon. Rajkumari holds a master's degree in transformative leadership development, and she sits quite comfortably at the intersection of interpersonal neurobiology, technology, culture, and empathic language for business. Rajkumari, it's such a treat to have you here with us today.
Such an honor to be here, Eugene. Thank you. Should we dive on in and share the content? I'm so excited.
Let's please. And we've got a great audience today.
Let's do it. Fabulous. Okie dokie. I am sharing my screen, and just give me a moment so that I can do all of the wonderful Zoom cockpit adjustments. Let's see. So, can I just get a thumbs up or something that y'all can see my shared screen?
We can see it.
Oh, fabulous. Okay, everyone, welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We have people from London and Los Angeles. Goodness gracious. I am so excited to share my content today. It is a relatively new piece of research. I do collaboration with Sarah Peyton. She's the phenomenal author of Your Resonant Self. She's also having her own summit next week, maybe this weekend. I don't even know when it is at this point. And so I love to start every single presentation with this slide, Black Lives Matter. And for those of you who don't know me, I have logos to prove my experience. Now, this is my background, and these are the clients, some of the clients that I've had the honor and opportunity to partner with, but the reality is this is actually who I am. So this is me with my father here in the lower right, and then this is me with my mother. My dad is from Indian descent. He was born in Kampala, Uganda, and my mom is French descent, but she was born in French Canada, so Quebec actually. And this is me in India with my grandparents. And this seems to be the only photo of me with my mom's mom crying, sadly. But that does not denote my relationship with her. My grandparents were phenomenal, all of them. So with that, let's go ahead and dive on in. And I want to share a little story with you about 4 billion years ago now. I think it was December of 2019. Well, that's how it feels for me. I flew to Los Angeles to do a full day of training, leadership training. And I hadn't yet met the CEO. And so we had an hour slotted together. And so we sat down, and I kid you not, 10 seconds after we exchanged niceties, the CEO asked me this question: what's the point of me being nice to my employees? And I will admit, I had to take a moment and kind of regroup myself. I'm just wondering, what might you have said in response to this question if you were about to do a full 7-hour training? And after I regrouped myself, this is actually what popped out of my mouth, thank goodness. Every single time you are mean to someone or interrupt them in some way, you're actually shutting down the parts of their brain that's making you money. Now, this really landed, thankfully, with the CEO, because they had just gotten 97 million in funding. So, yes. When we talk about motivating teams, I think for me, understanding humans from a performance perspective is key. So I want to ask you all a question. Um, when we look at high performance, many of us do recognition really well, right? But I'm wondering how many of us do appreciation really well. So could you share with me what you think the difference is between recognition and appreciation? And you can just pop your answers in the chat window. I'd love to see one or two. I'll just pause here for a moment and see your responses. Anybody? Anybody got some ideas? Ah, yes, here they come. Yeah, genuine human emotion. Absolutely. Acknowledgement versus gratitude. Appreciation. I love that. Yes, yes, yes. These are great. These are fantastic. Lifting up accomplishment. Yep, absolutely. Giving a shout out, what I care for. Yep, beautiful. Okay, so y'all are experts. You don't even need this workshop. That's great. So spot on, right? So recognition is about behavior. It is in fact the accomplishment element. It's the left hemisphere experience. And appreciation is about the well-being, our sense of emotion and the experiences, who we are, our values and our principles, right? Nice. So there's a lot of data that shows how much appreciation really impacts performance. And Gary Chapman, as many of you know, wrote a book called The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. And this is a data point from his book, which says that, when coworkers, employees are appreciated, engagement goes up 80%. I mean, this is a remarkable experience. So when we talk about high performance, we are actually talking about a bihemispheric experience. Most of us have 2 hemispheres. The motivational aspects of who we are actually a left hemisphere experience. And the emotional aspects of who we are, that appreciation piece, we feel appreciated for our trustworthiness, for our integrity, for our ability to collaborate or communicate clearly, right? That's a right hemisphere experience. So I want to talk a little bit about Jock Panksepp's work. He actually has a TED Talk, a couple of TED Talks, I think. He's no longer with us. He passed in 2018. But this is his work. His body of work is called Affective Neuroscience. And what it shows is that, and I am getting called, my doorbell is ringing, this is fascinating, that the left side is all about our seeking circuit. That's the motivational aspect. But all of the emotion of who we are as humans is on the right side of who we are, the right hemisphere. And so as leaders showing up in organizations, what is so critical is that ability to masterfully vacillate between the seeking circuit and all of the emotional circuitry. So what I want to do now is do a deeper dive into each of the circuits. And Maria, if you would be so kind as to paste in the handout that you all will have access to in the chat window. I'm going to go through these slides relatively quickly, but the really great news is that you'll have access to the handout, and so you can do a much deeper dive on your own after this workshop. So looking at this slide, the seeking circuit, you can see here on the lower right that these are needs, right? This particular circuit is all about our need for satisfaction, our need for achievement. And when these needs are met, we actually feel these emotions. We feel curiosity and striving and engagement. And when these needs are met, we have a neurochemical experience. For those of you who know me, I'm obsessed with the neurochemicals of who we are, the neurochemistry of our circuitry. And so this seeking circuit is all about secreting dopamine and glutamate. Now, however, when these needs aren't met, this circuit still secretes neurochemicals, and so we'll go about it a different way. What I've also included is kind of in workplace context, you can think of the seeking circuit as your circuit to build and problem solve. The other circuit, another circuit, is the care circuit. And this is one that I'm often working with senior leaders. The love and the warmth circuit. When we have these needs are met, then we feel these emotions, and these are the neurochemicals for the care circuit. And so you can think of the care circuit as your place where you do empathy and where you do relationships. If this is the care circuit, this is the circuit that actually helps you kind of step into both relationships, relationality, if you will, and empathy. And then we have our play circuit, right? Again, you have a handout. I'm going to go a little quicker here, but I just kind of want to get to the workplace context of each of these circuits. So your play circuit is about creative design, right? It's innovation. It's being able to brainstorm together. Now, your panic grief circuit is where you can provide support. Right? Self-awareness is also in this circuit. So being able to provide resources, to provide budget and capacities that help your peers, coworkers, cross-functionally as well. And your fear circuit is always about ensuring safety. This is where risk assessment happens. This is making sure that we're always taking into account that the organization as well insured, if you will. And then the rage circuit is about protection and advocacy. This is where we do allyship, right? This is where we are able to express ourselves from the rage circuit. The disgust circuit is where we hold boundaries. This is where we're able to say, hey, my plate's really full. I can't take this on, or I can delegate, right? So this is the disgust circuit. And then the sexuality circuit has to do with sexuality to some degree, but mostly the sexuality circuit is really about our growth, our professional development, our personal development, where we're encouraging employees on their own professional, growth and trajectory. So this is a snapshot. This is a snapshot of your circuits. And what I've done here is put them kind of in a place that you can see kind of a snapshot of each of their strengths. And so now I want to ask you if you will pop into the chat window, if anyone would like to share what their strengths are. Which circuit do you do well? Are you all about relationality and empathy? Or do you hold boundaries really well? Are you able to really provide air cover for your team and protect and advocate? What are some thoughts? Who would like to share? Providing support, yeah. Protect and advocate, nice. Brainstorming, yes, awesome. So now this is starting to give you insight about which circuitry is dominant or prominent for you. Empathy and relationships, encourage growth and development. Nice, good, right? So now we're gonna ask which circuits might be areas of growth for you. Which would you like to bring more forward to really kind of round out your leadership skill set, right? Nice, hold boundary. Yeah, that's a very common one. Thank you, Matt. Boundaries, yes. Protect, yes. I know innovation and brainstorming, me too. Yes, absolutely. The panic circuit, yeah, the panic, providing support is the panic circuit. Yep, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. Thank you for being so vulnerable. So just going back to the snapshot circuitry and emphasizing that we only have one circuit that's our motivational circuit, right? It's the circuit that is the seeking circuit. That's our get stuff done circuit. everything else is emotional. And so that's why it's so important to really be able to become masterful and fluent in feeling our feelings. So now I'm going to take all of this information and kind of tie it back to your leadership style. So many of you have heard of the fight, flight, and freeze, right? The seeking circuit seems like it could be a little overactive. Yes, and when you come to the full workshop, we'll definitely talk about that. So that's a really great segue, actually. Thank you, Olivia. So each of the circuits, just like the fight, flight, and freeze situation in our nervous system, also have a fight, flight, and freeze. And so what I've done here is kind of segregate a little differently, where we have a safety zone, a danger zone, and a threat zone. And I'd like to share with you now what happens when each of these circuits find themselves in one of these zones, and how that translates to leadership style and possibly behavior that you may have witnessed in the workplace. So when we are in the danger zone, when we are in the threat zone, this is because one of those needs in that circuit is blocked. So if you have your hand out and you kind of want to quickly follow along with me, that would be great, so that you can kind of look at the needs. I know there's a lot of information here. So this is the seeking circuit. When the seeking circuit is fully online and in the safety zone, hey, I'm open to discussion. I'm like in a healthy debate. I want to learn more about what's going on and why we can or can't do the thing. But the moment that my needs in my seeking circuit are not met, I now find myself moving into maybe a danger zone or a threat zone. And this is the leadership style that might be seen within someone on your team or someone in the past that you may have worked with. And so this is the behavior on the right side, which is being driven by an unmet need in this circuit. And most likely that unmet need is coming from a core belief in the danger zone that I only matter based on how much I deliver, therefore I only care about data, right? Or I'm only here for my paycheck because, you know, I don't feel engaged and I'm not really valued for my contribution. So that's the seeking circuit. The rage circuit, which is all about protection, right? It's all about advocacy. I can provide air cover really well for my team, but the moment that I may start to find myself in one of the zones, either the danger zone or the threat zone, the unmet need here around protection is actually the danger zone. I actually maybe learn to blame others when solving problems, and therefore when others make mistakes, I find myself being punitive with them, right? Or I avoid difficult conversations because maybe my unmet need in a past experience was I wasn't shown how to or taught how to protect myself. So that's the rage circuit. Questions, if you have them, just go ahead and ask them in the chat window. Fear circuit, right? This is about safety, making sure that we're safe. Psychological safety is here. So when we're here and we're fully on board and in the safety zone, we can really do risk assessment well. We can really notice where the gaps are and what's missing. But when we start to find ourselves having an unmet need in this circuit, what we might notice is that feedback is difficult for us, and we may get defensive because we're actually translating that as a sense of unworthiness. And so I might then not be so pleasant with my direct reports in that moment. And if I'm only doing what's expected of me in the threat zone, it's very possible that my past experiences, maybe even history of trauma, for example, might be impacting my ability to perform at my very best, right? The panic grief. So this one, again, I think is so fascinating. The danger zone for this one is I don't know when to stop talking because I'm not actually picking up on social cues. This is a really interesting place here. Self-awareness, as I mentioned, is in this circuit, a huge part of it. And it really stems from a deep sense of isolation and loneliness. So this is actually one of my dominant circuits that I've had to work through quite a bit in my own leadership style. And the threat zone is that relationships are difficult for me because in my past experiences, I didn't feel maybe supported or that I had a sense of shared reality, right? I may have been gaslit a lot or bullied a lot, for example, here. Now, the disgust circuit is really here. We can say no. Thank you, Gina. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. So the discuss circuit or the discusser, like, hey, thank you. I think this is a great idea, but we just don't have the capacity or the resources right now. Let's put it on the back burner, put it in the parking lot, whatever. And that is really a very healthy safety zone. But the minute that we find ourselves kind of moving into the danger or the threat zone, it's, an unmet need again, right? So this is about holding boundaries and making sure that we stay healthy and that we kind of keep that space of us and our sense of protection here as well. And so when we violate other people's boundaries, which could look like not complying with policy or not, following protocol or kind of going around someone to get what I need, right? I'm not really aware of how I'm showing up. I'm not noticing my own impact, even regardless of what my intention might be. And so I'm not seeing how it's impacting others, right? And how they might be on the receiving end of it. And then of course the threat is, I don't really know how to say no. Because I didn't experience my own boundaries being respected. And a couple of different circuitries, and maybe some of you might be asking, well, where does the people pleaser kind of thing land? It's a combination of different circuits. And when we do the longer workshop, I'm happy to dive into that. The place, I call it the joy circuit. The play circuit is I love my job. And what's really interesting about this is when there's a trigger zone here, I'm not feeling comfortable connecting with others. So I'm trying to connect with them, but I'm just feeling a little awkward. It's not landing as authentically as I would like. And, the threat zone, it's, oops, apologies about that. I hit the button by accident. I'm not comfortable exploring new things. So maybe I wasn't valued or encouraged to explore things in my formative experiences. So that kind of maybe shows up in my leadership style in some way. Right? I'm not challenged enough to the degree that I would like. This is the circuit that I work a lot with, as I mentioned before, with clients. And again, this is the relationality and the empathy circuit. But notice the danger in the threat circuit. And I definitely was in the danger zone for a lot of my workplace experiences, for sure. But what's happening here is in the moment that I'm witnessing someone having the discomfort, I'm actually trying to change them so that I don't feel my own sense of discomfort. Right? That's a key piece. And what we're really working on is allowing people to have their own experience and be in relationship to myself, really. And then the threat zone of the care circuit is muting myself completely. Chameleonizing, showing up and accommodating for others, because I didn't have that experience. I wasn't warmly welcomed, so I don't really know how to show up safely in the presence of this particular situation or whatever it might be. And then finally, the sexuality circuit, right? And again, this is all about professional development and encouraging that, personal development and encouraging that, really helping people on their professional trajectories and the growth. At Facebook, I remember we had something called the Jungle Gym, right? So we could actually try different roles if they were open in the organization and see if that resonated with us. And I loved that concept actually at Facebook. And so in the danger zone, I'm not really interested in people's well-being because I wasn't really encouraged to follow my own interests. And, the sexuality circuit has a lot to do with passion and life calling and individuation. And so when I feel stuck in my role at the office or my workplace experience, it probably is a muted or collapsed or threat zone of that sexuality circuit. So just something to think about there. And yes, if you were asking the question, there is in fact an ideal leadership style. And because we are working with organizations, because we are building product, because we are building services, it is important to have our get stuff done circuit fully online. When this circuit is blocked, I will say that this can lead to depression, right? So especially with the pandemic and all of the things that we're trying to manage and muster, it's really important to keep this circuit healthy. And it's also really important to bookend the seeking circuit with your care circuit and your play circuit. There's lots of different neurochemicals happening here with these three circuits. So having the relationality and the empathy, having that sense of creativity and brainstorming, along with the building of and the problem solving. And then, of course, absolutely have access to all the other circuits, because there's going to be situations where you need to protect your team and provide air cover, hold boundaries for something's happening cross-functionally, ensuring safety, providing support, and then the times when maybe in a one-on-one to really invite and push people to explore their own personal and professional development. That was a lot, right? Okay, great. So I'm just going to invite everyone to breathe, and then I'm going to share with you, of course, the most important slide of this entire presentation, which is my Tom Cruise photo, as my my designer likes to call it. So I'm going to stop sharing. That was a lot of information, and I'm going to try to go find the cockpit so that the Zoom cockpit, so that I can give power back to, yes.
Maria.
Top Gun Cruise, yes, exactly. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. I know we're staring at my photo a lot here. And Eugene, you're back.
I'm back. Rajkumari, thank you.
Yes.
Wow, I certainly identify with more bad traits than I care to acknowledge, and some good ones. But wow, I can see the areas that I need to work on in some of the discussion that you just went through. Yeah.
Would you like to share something?
Well, I will go there. I will go that I think, and I need to explore the fear circuit. I mean, I think I have a strong seeking circuit and caring circuit, and everyone knows I got a lot of play circuit, but I think I have an overdeveloped fear circuit, which I don't know where that comes from, because I've lived, although I only remember good things, so who knows? Maybe there were things that created fear in my life. But let's talk. For those who haven't been around Rajkumari and I, we have great dinners and enjoy great wine, and we have great conversations. And I'd like to recreate some of that by just getting better understanding of epigenetics and what this means, and how this shapes us. So Rajkumari, can you explain to us what is epigenetics and why do we need to care about that?
Well, so there really are two parallel definitions around epigenetics. The first is that any stressors in your environment, behavioral or environmental stressors, are constantly impacting your DNA, if you will, your genetic expression. And so, for example, if one stays at a company for many years that's toxic, that maybe they experienced bullying or gaslighting or micromanaging, and it was really difficult for them, their whole body will adapt to that experience. And then if they then change companies, and then there's a very empathic boss, and there's just a lot of psychological safety, that neurobiology, that body will then adapt to this new environment and start to neurochemically shift. The toxic environment will release a lot of chemicals around stress, like cortisol and adrenaline. But then when they come to a safer environment, their body will then adapt and release all of the feel-good stuff that you saw earlier in the slides. So that's the first definition. And the second is the one that's most interesting to me. And that is the study of Rachel Yehuda's work and Moshe Seif's work, where they actually found that individuals carry the traits and tragedies and traumas for over 200 years in our cellular biology. So in Rachel Yehuda's work, for example, She talks about how the children of Holocaust survivors actually exhibit identical or near identical PTSD symptoms as those who were actually in the concentration camps. And Dr. Joy DeGruy talks about this. She's the author of Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. She talks about how we carry the tragedies and traumas for 300 years. And Resmaa Menakem, who's the author of My Grandmother's Hands, talks about that we carry it for 490. Right? So it doesn't really matter how many centuries.
Right.
I think it's really unfun to carry all of this difficulty. But as we just saw, what's wonderful is we have circuitry that's neurochemically based and can be easily rewired to shift those experiences.
Well, you know, when you and I met, I was caretaking for a mother that had Parkinson's. So I was studying, I was in the middle of watching 20-something PBS specials on the brain. I'd never really spent much time studying the brain. And so the brain chemistry was top of mind. And we you know, I think the way I translated some of your learnings was that the absence of a particular brain chemistry may create certain behaviors, but more importantly, that as managers, we could make sure that people got, you know, hits of dopamine so that they'd be happier and more trusting.
Yeah.
Or if an otherwise very collaborative team member who had become uncollaborative and disagreeable all of a sudden, we might explore conversations or experiences that would give them a shot of, you know, a healing, you know, brain chemistry. Can talk about that a little bit, would you?
100%. I think someone actually mentioned this, I can't remember when, that, you know, our seeking circuit is I think everyone's seeking circuit is probably very fully online because, you know, I think we over-index for sure. I think everyone is great at building things and solving problems. The invitation is to bring that care circuitry more online. That care circuitry is all about that, the relationality aspects, to be in relationship with and to be able to empathize. You know, trust, as we know, is an oxytocin experience that from the care circuit. And Paul Zak, who wrote an interesting Harvard Business Review article called The Neuroscience of Trust, right? So each of these different neurochemicals are essential to develop as a leader. What's also interesting is that different circuits need different pairings. It's like, you know, a good red wine with the right cheese is just that delectable moment, right? So, for example, the fear circuit, in that moment that a person's activated in their fear circuit, where there's the danger of the threat zone, the last thing they need is someone to come in and have the care circuit fully online. That doesn't work because the fear circuit is needing safety, right? They're like, I need safety, right? So what they actually need is the person to come in and have their rage circuit fully online, which is about protection and advocacy and allyship. So that's the pairing for fear. Now the rage circuit, however, doesn't need the fear circuit. If the rage circuit is triggered, then there's an empathy that's required to bring that down from the danger of the threat zone. So really understanding the wine and cheese pairing piece with each of the circuits is quite important. But the last thing I'll just say is, you know, we just need our care, like Sarah Peyton says this so often, if we can just bring our care circuit more online more often, we would create a different world. And I agree.
So for the practicality of this and going back to my, you know, revelation, if I see some bad behaviors in the fear circuit,
yeah,
but I don't think of myself as a fearful person. Right. So can you help me reconcile that?
Yeah. So what specifically would you share a behavior?
Where I become less empathetic and need to admonish mistakes for mistakes.
Yeah, right. So you're wanting reassurance that everything's going to work out, right? But you're not there, you're admonishing.
Right.
And so that fear circuit needs to come in and say, hey, we got this, Eugene. We're going to take care of this. I'm going to do this thing and this thing and this thing, and it's going to be okay. And then your fear circuit will start to, okay, good. Is that right?
Yeah, I think when my fear circuit gets lit is I fear that I have mistrusted. And it's not right, because everybody makes mistakes, and
yes,
particularly in a fast running, but I can move forward when I have trust.
Yep.
And when there's a mistake that's not appropriately addressed, then all of a sudden all this foundational trust,
Yep.
I start questioning.
100%, 100%. So this actually happens to me. I actually go into micromanager mode, and that's a fear-based behavior. And so one of the things that I negotiate with my teammates is, hey, the invitation is call me out when that happens, and we have guidelines and guardrails on how to call that out. And in fact, that actually happened a few months ago, where we put something on social media. The comma was in the wrong place. There was a misspelling, and I completely freaked out because of who I am. And I called my person, I'm like, hey, this is wrong. And why? And they said, hey, Rajkumari, I'm noticing there's some tension right now in this conversation. And in that moment, I caught myself, because we have that agreement. And I took a breath, and I don't think that having a comma incorrectly in a sentence is the end of the world. And so I took a breath, and we renegotiated, we fixed the issue, we moved on.
I seeing that this is being recorded and that Jamie and Rita and Maria are online, I'm sure I'm going to get this playback soon, probably. Let's hope later than sooner. I want to jump to, you use the term disruptive diversity. What does that mean?
Feel your feelings.
Pardon?
Feel your feelings.
Is disruptive diversity?
So, yes. I'm trying to not go too technical here. But I'm going to do it. There's a technical term for belonging called neuroception. And neuroception is really the entire system that's always scanning for safety and danger and life-threatening experiences in our bodies. To the degree in which we have a sense of belonging with ourselves, and we're able to create safety within ourselves, that allows us to master our neuroception. Inclusion is about creating safety for others. It's the act of creating safety for others. Disruptive diversity is being able to manage the paradox of both simultaneously. I can feel discomfort and not feel safe in a moment of an interaction, while holding empathy and relationality for the other person and curiosity for their experience. That's that disruptive, diverse experience.
That I would not have gotten that. I'm so glad I asked you that question, because I think perhaps we don't, or I'm not going to speak for others. Perhaps I don't spend enough time focused on managing myself in order to better support and lead others.
Yeah. I'm so touched that you shared that so vulnerably. 100%. Transformative justice. LaFawn Davis, who's the vice president of ESG over at Indeed, talks a lot about how to bring in transformative justice into a workplace dynamic. And, at the core of transformative justice is really this element of How do I stay in relationship to myself while I am in conflict with someone else? How do I stay in relationship to myself while experiencing tension and in relationship with them?
Right.
It's always the question. And when we move into the left hemisphere and we start to do this binary, on off, us versus them experience, we lose the relationality piece. Right? My experience is just as valid as your experience. I'd like to learn more about your experience so that we can negotiate and do things differently and have a different kind of agreement.
So let's take some questions from the audience.
Great.
I bet there are some. And let me scroll over here. Well, there's a lot of expressions of appreciation for, I think a lot of people saw sides of themselves in your categorization and expressions of circuitry. So how to encourage exploration of these behaviors, circuits, and other people. Sometimes things go beyond managing performance and closer to exploring therapy or understanding trauma. What's outside the scope of work?
It depends on what feels comfortable for you. I think, I always tell leaders, your role is not to be therapist. You're not to play a therapist. That's not your role. Your role is to encourage and provide resources and feedback. And I think that's really important. I think there are 3 tenets of psychologically safe conversations. The first is being able to receive feedback, hear feedback. The second is to be accountable for one's actions, and to, if there's enough feedback that's coming in, to really kind of take a moment and be accountable for how you're showing up. And then the third one is, in fact, self-reflection. I mean, we don't actually learn in the moment. We learn after the experience occurred, and we reflect back on that experience. And, oh yeah, that could have gone differently. I wish I'd showed up a little differently there. That didn't go as well as I would have liked. So when we start to really kind of, as a team, honor these 3 tenets, right? Accountability, feedback, and self-reflection. Now we're creating a foundation. We're establishing a foundation for psychologically safe conversations where we can give this feedback, where that person can come to me and say, hey, Rajkumari, I'm noticing there's a little tension in this conversation. What's happening right now for you? And then I can take a breath, self-reflect, and go, oh yeah, I'm really anxious that people are going to judge me because I have a comma that's misplaced in a sentence, right? My own trauma gets loaded up. But then I can self-regulate enough to connect with this person, say thank you, let's correct, and move on.
I'm going to go to Min's question, then and then come back. So Min, thanks for being with us. Min is one of the executive directors of the Notley Tide. He asks, well, he makes a point. It seems as leaders, there's a great importance to be able to both emotionally and intellectually understand our patterned behaviors that are often the result of our lived experiences. It's easier said than done, and oftentimes that personal journey we're not always ready to go on. How much of that work ahead of time do you think people will need to engage with before being able to dive into circuitry?
Yeah, such a great question. I think people are going to take away whatever they're meant to take away with at that moment. And I think that there's a reason why, repetition is the mother of all learning. So that's thing 1. And thing 2, so many of us know how to do something theoretically, but doing it takes practice, right? Most of us know what basketball is. Most of us know what, I'm not a sports person at all. Most of us know what a free throw is, right? Throwing from the line into the hoop, right? Yeah, we know what that is. But the minute I put you on the basketball court, how's that going to be for you? Right? We got to, oh, I missed it again. Oh, I missed it again. Right? To keep practicing is the key to all of this.
Well, look, I mean, many of us come from the startup world, and we realize, FEL, I mean, the acronym that my husband Stephen created for it is fast applied iterative learning. And we all know that failure is just a step in a critical step to success. So I guess as managers, should we be negotiating opportunities to fail and be called out on it with our teams?
To the degree in which it feels psychologically safe for your team culture, yes.
You know, I think I told you, or I know I told you, Raj, when I was 29 years old, I got made, and I knew it. It's promoted way above my management competencies. De facto COO of a rather large organization, and I had to paste, these rules behind me at my desk. It says you have the right to belong, to feel safe, to be seen and heard, to make a difference, and to be loved.
Yeah.
And because I'd be in conversations with folks who I didn't have the expertise or the muscle memory to make sure all those things were happening. People would they'd be doing this while I'm talking. They're like, I'm not feeling safe, or I don't feel belonged, and certainly I don't feel loved. And I think, now I'm 60 years old and I probably still need that sign behind me, because and more today, I think we are often ridiculously distracted because we're doing too many things at one time. And we are going too fast to be genuinely present.
I agree 100%. How we feel feelings is we have to have connection to our body.
Right.
That's a much slower experience than thinking thoughts and brainstorming and problem solving.
What do you think we've especially experienced this last 12 months? I mean, what an anniversary to be celebrating this month, the anniversary of the pandemic. But I bet there is both, as in everything, both negatives and positives. So what are some of those that you're identifying with clients or other leaders?
Well, my hope for sure in the last 12 months is that we truly have a new valuation on care and relationality, that we really truly are going to value connection in a very different way, and that we're going to be less dismissive, less wanting to engage more deeply with each other. That's the hope, right? And really wanting to listen more. I think not having this ability to connect and be in the presence of each other has really created some anxiety at some levels that I don't think enough of us are talking about. And I don't necessarily know that it is in fact burnout, but I think that it is something that Sarah Peyton talks about called alarmed aloneness. And this is in the panic grief circuit. And alarmed aloneness is when something that's very important to us suddenly disappears. And our sense of safety collectively on this planet suddenly disappeared. Right? Our routines disappeared. We weren't sure if we could now touch the people that we love. How do we hug them, right? This anxiety that came forward was a really deep-rooted sense of alarmed aloneness. And I hope that alarmed aloneness will catapult us into really taking time to cultivate far deeper connections and really be incredibly more empathic with each other, in the workplace especially.
Is a question from the audience, is there any difference in the ideal leadership style for someone leading an early stage company?
I think no. The answer to that quickly is no. I think that there is too much emphasis placed on build, 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 and not enough on relationality. And I think, you know, I often get founders who are 100, 150 people in, and now they're thinking about culture. And when I had the luxury of working with two co-founders from the ground up, it was magical. It was magical to work through culture in that way. We spent a year, I mean, they were doing their build stuff as well, but in the coaching aspect, we were working on the culture. And to this day, they still say, you know, that has been a foundation of who we are now.
Carol wants to know, where do you put the ego piece in all these circuits and relationships?
Gently in your hands. You know, ego is such a marvelously huge word. And I think, you know, I'm doing a lot of research right now on the heart and the emphasis on the electromagnetic frequencies that the heart really exudes. And I think the ego lives in the left hemisphere, in my humble opinion. It's the functionality piece of who we are. It's the one who wants to make sure that we are doing it right. And as long as the ego has the partnership of the care circuit, the right hemisphere is all about interconnectedness and caring and wanting to be with others, and it sees the big picture. As long as the ego has that partnership of the right hemisphere, I think the ego is, you know, welcome to explore at will.
Well, and I've talked about it for a long time. The ego, while I think that pairing is a governor, is really critical, because you don't want to you want to live up to your promises to investors and employees. You want to further your reputation. You want to make a lot of money for yourself and everyone else, and including your team members who have options. So it's a necessary. I mean, we look for that, or I look for that in entrepreneurs that I'm going to invest in. I just want to know that it is contained. And, you know, Rajkumari, you and I have talked about, and I don't think we've announced that you were very generous in saying that we'll put together a workshop. And everyone here will email you guys about this post summit. But what will that 2-hour workshop look like?
You know, there's an opportunity to really kind of do a deeper dive. It's the same slides for sure, but now we're moving into breakout rooms and exploring and sharing and having conversations with each other and getting to know each other. And then to really kind of say, well, what do I do when this happens? What I'm in the process of building right now with Sarah Peyton is an actual playbook. What do I do when an employee has family members pass away? What do I do when an employee is defensive? What do I do when an employee actually is not complying with policy? What do I do with someone who's bullying or micromanaging? So that playbook will also be available soon. I don't know actually if it'll be available for the workshop, but that is the research now that's coming together with Sarah and I.
Well, any final word to people about circuitry or in this broader topic?
You know, this is really an opportunity to step deeply into your own leadership style and invite forward all the parts of you that need attention, and really bring forward that care circuit as much as possible.
Rajkumari, thank you very much. And we'll be talking a lot more about Culturati and about this workshop that we're organizing. For all of you still here, thank you for joining us today on Culturati Live. Maria has put in the chat the link to the Culturati Summit. This is our 6th Culturati Summit, and we're exploring 3 tracks that appear to be the greatest pain points in culture today. The first is mental health and well-being. The second is empowering managers. especially frontline and middle managers. And the third is DEI leadership. We have a great lineup of speakers, following in Rajkumari's footsteps, or Ariana Huffington, Tristan Walker, Shelley Ambricher, just tons of folks. It's over 3 days, 4 hours each day. There'll be 5 different sessions each day. And if I was just an attendee, I wouldn't be able to attend, all 4 hours every day. But our schedule will be up very soon, if it's not already, so that you can plan which 60 minutes or which 35 minutes of any of those days you're able to attend. We're going to run this on a virtual platform that we're excited to premiere with AA Labs. So you'll feel like you're in a big hall, and our sponsors and our people will be there. We'll be bookended by a new technology called On the Dot that will allow us to stay in communication before and after the summit. Thank you for joining us today. Rajkumari, thank you for being with us, for being one of our 3 Culturati scholars. And we'll see you all very soon.
Thanks, everyone. Eugene, it's an absolute pleasure. See you all at Culturati.